This is Countdown to Economic Collapse, April 22nd, 2012. I'm David John Sponheim for America's Third Party, running for president. I would like to talk to you about what you can do to change your country. To change it at a very pivotal time when the two-party system is ruling the entire media and the political landscape. We, Americans, need to take our country back. Are you tired of foreigners getting your paycheck, getting your tax dollars, collecting food stamps and Social Security funds when you're concerned about your own future? Well, this is your opportunity to change all that, to protect the border, to get our troops home, to legalize marijuana. All of these things are part of what we stand for at America's Third Party. And if you're one of those people that is just tired of the two-party system in general, like myself, then you're going to want to hear what I have to say. We have been, as a nation, controlled by the World Monetary Fund, the IMF, the World Bank. Everyone is controlling us except for the American people. The representatives of those organizations here in the United States would be the Federal Reserve, an organization that barely skirts legality, in my opinion. The passing of the Federal Reserve Act was the biggest mistake that Woodrow Wilson made, and that was by his own admission. We've got a problem, and these people continue to waste our tax dollars and basically suck them in. The money you pay to the Treasury Department goes directly to the Federal Reserve to pay the interest on the debt that they keep acquiring. That's the problem. Now, the IMF doesn't loan out to very many countries, just the ones in their little hand-picked group, like Greece and Portugal. And obviously Germany and France are kingpins in the IMF. And England, of course, is a very big player as well. And the Eurozone gets special favor with the IMF. Our country is basically harvested like a resource and is used as kind of like a rudder on a vessel to keep it steady. Our country is the police force for the International Monetary Fund. We go around doing things like starting wars in Libya, or maybe sending in money or supplies into rebel forces in Syria. These are areas that this country needs to get out of. And we should, as a nation, recognize that the two parties have taken us into this hole, this chasm, of sucking up to monetary control by the World Bank. If we don't step outside of that loop, we're going to be seen as the tyrant and the warlord around the world. And you know something? I know Americans, we're not that way. We need to get our country back on track, bring our troops home, and protect our borders. These are things that seem so natural to me, but to the American people at large, we can't do that. We don't have the power. We don't even have a lobbying group. I mean, the American people don't have a lobbying group. That's how bad it is. We need some sort of a group of people, and that's why we created America's Third Party, so we can bring this nation together, uniting people. Fiscal conservatives can unite with social liberals. There's no reason why we can't. We can find avenues that we can help create jobs, solve the education cost issues, and also provide infrastructure that will lead to a lot of improved services for Americans all around the country. We can do that and do it at a cost savings too. You see, we don't need to pay big companies like Boeing and Lockheed huge amounts of money. We can continue working with them, but we don't need to pay them the amount of money that Barack Obama is paying them. We can be a lot smarter about that. And if we do that, we will begin to control and shore up our purse strings and become solvent again. Our country cannot possibly have a spendthrift, spendaholic like President Barack Obama as the leader for another 4 more years. It's going to end up in a stalemate in Congress. They won't be able to solve any of the budgetary crises, and they won't be able to solve some of the systemic flaws in our economy, like jobs, like housing, like low-cost health care. Obamacare is not going to provide low-cost health care. It's going to shoot the cost up $1 trillion over 10 years. And the fact is, most of the people in government are being used by Barack Obama to control issues, to leverage choices that people make. Kathleen Sebelius actually was used by Obama to control the Obamacare vote, telling healthcare insurance providers they couldn't talk to their clients about Obamacare. That's one thing he did, which I believe is illegal. He's also recently told the FCC to put pressure on media outlets that play the information that Joe Arpaio of Arizona has put out about Obama's forged birth certificate. That's just completely a misuse of power. And now we find out that Obama has a Secret Service debacle forming within his own ranks. Well, Joe Lieberman wants Obama to investigate it himself. I think the whole thing started with Obama. I think he understands he has a morale issue among the Secret Service. I think it's common knowledge that many of these people have been going to prostitutes for a long, long time. They're just bringing it out in the open and using sex crimes to get rid of people that are not loyal to Barack Obama. That's my suspicion. And if it's a morale issue, there's a reason for it. The Secret Service are highly trained. If they see a flaky president, they're the first to say, hey, something's going on. But of course, it's a breach of security for a president as well. I wouldn't tolerate it, but there's got to be a reason why they're doing that. And this is exactly my point. If you've got a morale issue within the ranks, and we've got a lot of men in the military that don't support Barack Obama, and they're not going to fight as hard as they normally would to defend their country because they don't like Barack Obama. This is a problem. And if you think voting for Barack Obama is going to solve that problem, you're voting for a mistake. A mistake that's been going on for over 3 years now, that the American people are unable to recognize is a mistake because no one can ask key questions in the media. They are suppressed. They are told that they're not allowed to talk about certain issues. Seriously. If I take the birther issue out there, Bill O'Reilly will run me down and call me a whack job, simply because I'm raising an issue that's extremely important to our country's future. If we've got a guy that produces a long-form birth certificate that's a forgery, that experts are saying is a forgery, we've got a serious problem, and no one's addressing that in the mainstream media. So I'm kind of charged up for 2013. I'm really, really hoping that we can get to the bottom of corruption in this country. The kind of corruption we're seeing now may have happened with Walmart. Walmart has been bribing officials in Mexico City. That's right, and instead of doing an internal review properly, they routed it back to the same people that were doing the bribery back in Mexico City. So the Justice Department has to step in on a lot of different levels to break up big monopolies like Walmart. Other issues have to happen. We have to spark new growth in the private sector. That means small businesses have to have less regulation. They have to have an unfettered access to resources and opportunity. And that means a low-cost education, a partnership with local community colleges so we can get people certifications within 6 weeks to 6 months. We've got great ideas at America's Third Party that can solve all of the key problems affecting our economy right now. But you've got to step up right now and click the link below and become a verified delegate at Americans Elect and show me support. If you do that in the next 8 days, I will have enough click-throughs to get into the running to become that person to challenge Mitt Romney and Barack Obama. Do you want that? I want that. And I believe I can do it. I believe I've got enough messages to carry into the mainstream media to shake up politics well into the future. And I think the key is to find accountability and get back to transparency in government. Because if we don't have it, our country is going to slip deeper and deeper into this sludge of a depression, an economic depression, which is occurring right now. Which means that nobody makes any money on their money. And we're seeing a problem. We've seen the infrastructure bank that Barack Obama is proposing introduced by John Kerry recently in a conference call that my campaign manager was involved in, Sarah Hart. She was talking to Senator John Kerry about the question of the infrastructure bank that he's proposing, a charter infrastructure bank. And Sarah had asked him, isn't that just like the Federal Reserve? And John Kerry got very flustered and started spouting off about how this chartered infrastructure bank would be offering $100 million loans to West Coast and East Coast companies and $25 million loans to companies within the country. He seemed very flustered. And it's also interesting to note that chartered banks are not in the public's interest. They siphon money into private hands. We would love an infrastructure bank at America's Third Party. And I've talked about opening one with a 2% interest rate connected to the discount window at the Treasury. And we would have that money, that 2%, come back to the U.S. government to handle its operating and administrative costs. That's a very sensible plan, not some plan like John Kerry's proposing, which is to give more money to private bankers in his attempt to win their favor. So obviously we need a new tweaking to our political process. And that's why at America's Third Party we have a centrist vision for this country, where we can unite the two parties in the center and formulate fiscally conservative and socially liberal plans for this country long term. I'm David John Sponheim, and I support this message.
ATP, you and me.